MPs are going to return to Parliament tomorrow. The government's promising to deliver the most packed legislative agenda for a change of administration in decades.
But the union Unite is already warning that the UK needs change, not cuts. This following a speech from Sir Keir Starmer earlier this week, where he said things will only get worse before they get better. So let's speak to Lucy Powell, who's a Labour MP and also leader of the House of Commons. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. Let's start with that. The quote from the Unite General Secretary, Sharon Graham. She said, "We need change. A bleak vision of Britain is not what we need now." But that's what we're getting from the government at the moment.
Well, it's not actually. We were elected on a mandate of change, and we are going to be delivering that change. People want big change in this country, and there are a lot of big problems that we need to address, and that's what we've already set about doing since we were elected, and that is reflected in what we're doing in the House of Commons, bringing in new bills to transform the energy markets, for example, the rail franchising system in this country. We're going to be bringing in tough action on water bosses, on employment rights, renters reform, making sure that tenants have got rights, new rights for the first time in a generation. So these are big things that we're bringing in. But we also have to level with people, because I think one of the things we all found at this general election in particular, and we have over time, is that people don't believe politicians anymore. And that's because we've had an era of sort of false promises, unmet promises, things not being delivered. And we're going to be honest with people about the state of the country that as we find it. And it has been a very difficult state that we found the government, the country in, with an economic black hole that needed to be filled. So things might be more difficult before they get better, but we can promise people that there will be big change that we're going to be delivering.
Two of the early things that you've done, you've given pay rises to public sector workers in a couple of areas, junior doctors being one of them. And you also have said anyone on pension credit, pensioners not on pension credit, won't get the winter fuel allowance. Now, Sharon Graham's point is that you're pitting pensioners against workers. You're already causing division.
Well, obviously, Sharon Graham's job, I think, is to try and support workers and make sure that they get fair pay. But that's not the narrative we're pushing here at all, that we have inherited this really difficult...
It might not be the narrative, but it's the effect, isn't it?
What we've inherited was much worse than not just what we thought it was going to be, but what the Office of Budget Responsibility, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, much worse in terms of the in-year situation for the country's finances. So we've had to take some really difficult decisions that we wouldn't have wanted to have taken around things like targeting now the winter fuel payment. And the reason we do that is because the deficit was much higher than anyone thought, and the spending was much higher than anyone thought. If we hadn't taken that action, we'd have seen a run on the pound, we'd have seen the economy crashing, and the people who pay the heaviest price for that are the poorest and pensioners and those on fixed income. So that stability is really important to the living standards of pensioners and everybody else.
Those pensioners, all of a sudden, you've taken away a load of money that they get to help with their winter fuel, and that's going to make a tight situation, if they're not on pension credits, even tighter.
No, it is, and it's really been a very difficult decision. It's not one that we would have wanted to take, but to try and find in-year savings, so savings this year, this financial year, is an incredibly difficult thing to do, which we had to do. And so means testing the winter fuel payment is something we've had to consider. But let's just be clear that because of our commitment to the triple lock, which means that pensioners, the state pension will increase by either inflation or average earnings or 2%, whichever is the highest, pensioners are going to see the state pension increase by hundreds, possibly thousands of pounds over the course of this Parliament, and they will be better off.
I mean, it's clearly been a huge issue for a lot of people. A lot of Labour MPs have been telling the BBC that their inboxes are full from constituents about the winter fuel payments. Do you think there's any measures that are going to be introduced that might lessen the impact as we head towards winter?
Well, there are a few things. We want pensioners who are entitled to pensioner credit to apply for that and explore that, and there'll be a big campaign to deliver that, working with charities and others as well. We've got the Warms home discount, so the 3 million poorest households in this country will get £150 towards their energy bills this winter as well. And then our long-term and medium-term plans to keep energy bills and get energy bills lower through things like setting up GB Energy, which we'll be doing next week in Parliament. This action and keeping this stability in the economy and the triple lock for pensioners, we think, will support people over the medium and long term to be better off than they have been in recent years.
So you don't see any scenario where the winter fuel payments decision might be reversed?
I don't.
The Prime Minister has said that the budget in the autumn is going to be tough, brutal. One thing that was the Conservatives said in the election campaign was you were going to put taxes up, taxes are going to go up. I think it's quite evident taxes are going to have to go up. You're pretty much saying that anyway in order to try and balance the books. I know you'll say you're not going to write the budget here and tell us what's in it, but what can people look out for? I mean, are things like inheritance tax and things like that likely to be targeted? Well,
look, we've said that income tax, national insurance, VAT will absolutely not be going up. So, those taxes on ordinary working people, we are committed to keeping. And you wouldn't reverse keeping those as they are.
You wouldn't reverse the national insurance that the Conservatives have done relatively recently.
We're not changing those things, and we've said that. But obviously, all the other matters are for the Chancellor, and she'll be looking at those in detail. But as I say, what we've had to tackle here is the Conservative government were making many promises, had huge overspends. They had nearly £7 billion overspend just on our asylum system. Overspend, £7 billion that we've had to identify. They were making promises they couldn't keep. They had the public sector pay award sitting on their desk that they knew they were going to have to fulfil, but they hadn't actually identified the money to do it. So we're having to take on those difficult challenges, but at the same time, and keep the economy stable so that living standards can improve. But at the same time, we are addressing the big challenges the country faces to keep energy bills low, to get growth in the economy, which in the end will support...
Keep them as low as you can. I mean, you can't keep them low, can you, unfortunately, because it's out of your control to some extent.
Well, exactly. The point is this country has been very exposed to global gas markets and the big gas suppliers, and that's why we want to make sure that we've got secure, renewable energy supplies, clean energy supplies to protect us in the future from these global shocks, and that will keep people's bills low, and that is something that we can take action to deliver, and we will be supporting people's incomes, and we want to see people better off over the course of this Parliament.
Does it surprise you that the biggest union, when we're talking about a Labour government, is effectively saying that you need to change the messaging, that we hear that there's a problem, but another 10 years potentially of austerity Mark II, that would be very difficult for a lot of people to deal with?
Look, we're not talking about austerity. We're talking about having a stable economy, because stability in the economy, when the economy crashes, when we see inflationary spikes, when we see interest rates going through the roof, as we've seen in recent years, as a result of some decisions taken by this government, not just global factors, it's the poorest in society that pay the heaviest price. And that's why it's so important to us to stabilise the economy and then get that growth so that we can improve people's wages, improve people's living standards and get good jobs in every community. And that is what we are about.
Just talk briefly. One of the things you've said you're going to do this autumn is look at the ticketing system.
Yes.
Many people will have experienced, you yourself included, Sarah as well, trying to get Oasis tickets
yesterday. Did you get them?
I didn't, did you?
I did. But
well done.
Yeah, hours of queuing.
But did you have to pay an enormous amount of money for them, more than you were expecting to pay, because of this in-demand way in which the system works?
Well, unfortunately, yeah, I did. I only bought 2 in the end. But look, I mean...
So can you stop that? Because, I mean, I didn't try and buy them, but it seems to me a bit... You go online expecting to pay £135 or whatever it was for a ticket, and then by the time you actually get there, because they're badged in demand or whatever
it's the surge pricing, I think, which took a lot of people by surprise.
It doubles, more than doubles, triples. and you've been on a queue for 5 hours to get it, and then your temptation is to say, I'll stick it on the credit card and worry about it another day, and probably can't afford it. But that's not fair. Is that ripping fans off?
Well, look, I mean, I think there's two issues here. There's obviously the ticket touting issue, where the sort of secondary sites selling tickets at vastly inflated prices, and we are going to be taking action on that. It was in our manifesto. There'll be a consultation about some of the steps we want to take to stop secondary ticket touts and giving consumers more rights over that. I'm not sure whether that consultation will be looking at this sort of in-demand pricing, but that is something that we've seen a lot more of recently, and not just tickets and West End tickets, but we also see it on airlines and trains and so on, where there is that sort of peak time to do. But
doesn't seem fair, though, does it?
Well, I think, look, maybe there should be some more transparency about that, but these issues will be looked at as we look at ticket touting in the autumn, and it's something that we do want to make sure that there are solid consumer rights there underpinning it.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. Lucy Powell, Leader of the House of Commons and Labour MP.